I always suspected I was the outsider, but I never expected my sister to hand me the evidence. On a quiet Tuesday, Jenna accidentally forwarded a video meant for a secret group chat called Family Core. In 30 seconds, I watched my parents and the sister I adored plotting to paint me as unstable to seize an inheritance I did not even know existed. I pressed play, and the family I thought I knew ceased to exist. The silence in my apartment was not empty, it was deliberate. I had spent 32 years curating a life that felt like a deep exhale, a direct counterpoint to the breathless, high-wire act of growing up in the Bryant household. Here, in my third-floor walk-up in Ridgeview, the air was still. The beige walls were unadorned except for a few framed prints I had chosen solely because they soothed me. There were no shouts, no passive-aggressive sighs echoing from the kitchen, and absolutely no walking on eggshells. I sat at my small oak dining table, the one I had refurbished myself last summer, staring at the glow of my laptop screen. Being a marketing analyst for a mid-size firm wasn't exactly the stuff of childhood dreams. But I loved the logic of it. Data didn't lie. Data didn't say one thing to your face and another to your neighbors. If a campaign failed, the numbers told you why. There was a clean, brutal honesty to spreadsheets that I found infinitely comforting. My phone buzzed against the wood of the table, vibrating with a persistence that made my stomach tighten before I even looked at the caller ID. It was 7 p.m. on a Tuesday. I knew who it was. I picked up the phone and saw the photo I had assigned to the contact. It was a picture of my mother, Elaine, smiling at a garden party. Looking for all the world like the quintessential Midwestern matriarch, I let it ring twice more. This was a small rebellion, a tiny boundary I set for myself. I took a sip of my cooling tea, steeled my lungs with a breath, and swiped to answer. "Hi, Mom," I said, keeping my voice level. "Madeline." She breathed out, as if she had just run a marathon to get to the phone. "We were just sitting here having dinner and realized we had not heard your voice in ages. Your father was asking if you were still alive." I closed my eyes briefly. It had been exactly 4 days since we last spoke. "I am alive." "Mom," I said, staring at the conditional formatting on my Excel sheet, "I am just working. We have a big quarterly review coming up." "Work," she said, the word dripping with a distinct lack of impressed tone. "You are always working. Madeline, it is a wonder you have time to eat. You know, Jenna called us this morning before she even dropped the kids at school. She has that big charity auction coming up. The twins are sick, and she still managed to talk to us for 45 minutes. The comparison was instantaneous, familiar, and exhausting. Jenna. My younger sister, the golden child, the one who had married the right man, bought the house 3 streets away from our parents, and produced the requisite grandchildren. Jenna was the sun around which the Bryant solar system orbited. I was more like Pluto, distant, cold, and occasionally debated as to whether I really belonged in the system at all. "That is great, Mom," I said, and I meant it. I loved Jenna, mostly. I just hated being the measuring stick she was constantly held up against. Jenna is great at juggling things. She prioritizes family. Elaine said, "That is the difference. We worry about you. Madeline, all alone in that apartment. It is not natural for a woman your age to be so isolated. You get in your own head too much. You always have." I felt the familiar prickle of defensiveness, the old urge to explain that I wasn't isolated, that I had friends, that I had a life, but I knew better. Explanations were just fuel for the fire. "I have friends, Mom," I said instead. "April and I are going to the cinema on Friday." "April," Elaine scoffed softly. "That girl is as flighty as a bird. I do not know why you rely on her so much. But fine. I suppose we will not see you this weekend then?" I looked at my calendar. It was empty, save for the movie. I could go. I could drive the 20 minutes to the house I grew up in, sit on the stiff floral sofa, and endure 3 hours of commentary on my hair, my job, and my lack of a husband. I have to work this weekend. Actually, I lied. It rolled off my tongue with practiced ease. Silence on the other end. The kind of silence that was loud with judgment. "Well," Elaine said finally, her voice tight. "If you are too busy for your family, you are too busy. We will just have to tell your father you could not make time. Again. I am sorry. Mom, I am sure you are," she said. She hung up without saying goodbye. I set the phone down and exhaled, a long, shuddering breath that seemed to rattle in my chest. It was a standard interaction. By the metrics of the Bryant family, it was almost pleasant. No one had yelled, no one had cried, and yet I felt that familiar heavy residue, like I had been dipped in tar. I needed to reset. I picked up my phone again and opened Instagram, a mindless habit to numb the sting of the call. The algorithm knew me well. Interior design videos, cooking hacks, and satisfying organization clips. I scrolled for a few minutes, letting the colors wash over me, until a post from my father popped up. It was a photo of Jenna. She was standing in my parents' kitchen, holding a tray of brownies, smiling that wide, infectious smile that had gotten her out of every parking ticket she had ever received. The caption read, "So proud of our girl, handles everything with a smile, the heart of this family." I looked at the timestamp. It was posted 2 hours ago. Beneath it, my mother had commented, "A true blessing. Unlike some, she knows what matters." I stared at the comment. It was passive-aggressive. Sure, but it was public. Anyone who knew us knew exactly who "some" referred to. I felt a hot flush of embarrassment, but I forced myself to keep scrolling. This was the narrative. It had been the narrative since I was 12 and Jenna was 9. Madeline was the difficult one, the moody one, the one who took everything too seriously. Jenna was the light. I double-tapped a photo of a friend's cat, locked the phone, and tossed it onto the sofa cushions. I refused to let them ruin my Tuesday. I stood up and walked to the kitchen to refill my water. My apartment was quiet. Yes, but it was mine. I thought about April. I should text her. April was the antidote to the Bryants. She was loud, messy, fiercely loyal, and had zero filter. She knew my parents were, in her words, emotional vampires. She was the one who had held my hand when I moved out at 22, desperate to escape the suffocation. She was the family I had chosen. I went back to my laptop. I had a presentation to finish for the morning. The client was a regional logistics company looking to rebrand, and I needed to show them that their customer retention rates were slipping because of their outdated interface. It was a problem with a solution. I could fix this. I worked for 3 hours straight. The city outside my window grew dark, the streetlights of Ridgeview flickering on, casting long orange shadows across my living room floor. I lost myself in the rhythm of the work, the clicking of the keys, the satisfying alignment of charts and graphs. It was nearly 11 at night when the notification popped up. I had my phone linked to my laptop, so the message appeared in the top right corner of my screen, interrupting my view of a bar graph. Jenna, video attachment. LOL. Look at this. I blinked, rubbing my eyes. It was late for Jenna. Usually. She was asleep by 10, exhausted by the twins and her endless social calendar. I assumed it was a mistake, or maybe a video of the kids doing something funny that she had meant to send earlier. LOL, look at this, was her standard caption for everything from a dog falling over to a screenshot of a bad outfit. I clicked the notification. The file opened on my desktop. It was a screen recording. I leaned back in my chair, stretching my neck, expecting a 30-second clip of a toddler tantrum or a cooking fail. The video started. It wasn't a camera video. It was a recording of Jenna's phone screen. She was scrolling through a text conversation. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. The background of the chat app was the default gray. The group name at the top read, Family Core. I frowned. We had a family group chat. It was called Bryant Family. It included me, Jenna, Mom, and Dad. We used it mostly for birthday wishes and coordinating Thanksgiving. This was different. I saw the profile pictures next to the messages. My mother's garden party photo, my father's blurry selfie in his fishing hat, Jenna's professional headshot, and two others, my Aunt Sarah and my cousin Mike. I wasn't in it. I leaned closer to the screen, a strange coldness settling in my stomach. Jenna's voice came through the speakers. She must have been recording her screen while speaking. Perhaps to send to a friend or her husband to show them something funny in the chat. Oh my God. You have to read what Dad just typed. Jenna's voice said. She sounded stifled, like she was trying not to laugh too loud. It is so mean, but so true. On the screen. She scrolled up. I saw a meme. It was a picture of a woman screaming at a cat, a popular format. The text over the woman said, Madeline when we ask her to pass the salt. The text over the cat said, the rest of us just trying to eat. My stomach dropped. Beneath the meme, my cousin Mike had reacted with a laughing emoji. Then a text from my mother. Honestly, I am afraid to even call her these days. She takes everything as an attack. It is exhausting walking on eggshells around someone who is so clearly unwell. I froze. Unwell? I paused the video. My hand was hovering over the spacebar, trembling slightly. Unwell. That was a heavy word. That was a specific word. I remembered the phone call earlier. You get in your own head too much. I pressed play. Jenna's screen kept scrolling. Her voice narrated over it. Light and airy. See? Jenna said. They are finally admitting it. I told you she was getting worse. Worse? I hadn't had a panic attack in 3 years. I was promoting at work. I was paying my bills. I was fine. The tone of the messages on the screen shifted. The jokes and memes faded, replaced by longer blocks of text. My father, Thomas, had typed a paragraph. I spoke to the guy at Marston Coal today. He says we need to get the paperwork lined up before the end of the month. If we want to handle the house and accounts, we have to move before Mad goes off the rails again. We cannot risk her controlling the estate. She is too unstable. I read the words 3 times. Marston Coal. That was a law firm downtown. High-end. Expensive. The house and accounts. What house? My parents owned their house, but why would they be worried about me controlling it? And the estate? The blood drained from my face. I felt lightheaded. The room tilting slightly to the left. Jenna's scrolling slowed down in the video. Aunt Sarah had replied, Are you sure you can get the signature? She can be stubborn. My mother replied, Leave that to us. We just need to frame it as help. We tell her it is a temporary wellness check, a way to take the load off. Once we get that evaluation signed, the lawyer said we will be secure. She won't have access to a dime of the grandparents' money. Grandparents' money? My grandparents had died 4 months ago. Grandma first, then Grandpa 2 weeks later. It had been devastating. I had loved them fiercely. They were the only ones who never made me feel like an alien. When they passed, my parents told me there was no will, that they had died with significant debt, and that the house was being sold to cover the nursing home costs. I had grieved, accepted it, and moved on. I stared at the screen. Grandparents' money. My father typed again. Exactly. We are doing her a favor. Really, she would just blow it on therapy or some nonsense. This way. The family keeps what belongs to the family. The cruelty was breathtaking. It wasn't just mean. It was dismissive. They talked about me as if I were a broken appliance that needed to be put into storage so it wouldn't hurt itself. And Jenna, my sister, the one I had bought prom dresses for, the one I had stayed up with when her first boyfriend cheated on her. In the video, Jenna was typing a reply into the group chat. I will talk to her tomorrow. I will tell her she looks tired. Plant the seed. She hit send. Then, the screen recording changed. Jenna must have walked past a mirror or turned the camera on herself to stop the recording. For a split second, I saw her face. She was sitting in her car, the dashboard lights illuminating her features. She wasn't laughing anymore. The bubbly narration was gone. She looked at the camera, her thumb hovering over the stop button. Her eyes were wide, dark in the low light. She looked scared. I do not like this, she whispered. It was barely audible, a breath of sound. Then the video cut to black. I sat in my chair, the silence of the apartment now deafening. The cursor blinked on my screen. signaling the end of the file. I didn't move. I couldn't move. My brain was trying to process the sheer volume of information I had just absorbed in 45 seconds. They had a secret group chat. Family core. They were mocking me. They were planning something legal. My grandparents left money, an estate. My parents lied to me. They were trying to force me into a psychological evaluation to declare me incompetent. And Jenna was helping them. I felt a physical pain in my chest, a sharp, twisting knot behind my sternum. It was betrayal, pure and undiluted. It wasn't just that they didn't like me. I had known that for years. It was that they were actively conspiring against me. They were rewriting my history, turning my quiet nature into instability, my boundaries into mental illness, all to steal something I didn't even know I had. I reached out and touched the screen, as if I could wipe the words away. Once we get that evaluation signed. I remembered Elaine's voice on the phone hours ago. We worry about you. You get in your own head too much. It hadn't been concern. It had been groundwork. I looked at the timestamp of the video message again. Jenna had sent it to me. Why? LOL. Look at this. She must have meant to send it to someone else. Maybe her husband? Maybe another friend she was gossiping with? She had screen recorded the chat to share the joke, and in a slip of a finger. She had selected Madeline instead of Mark or Megan. She didn't know yet. I looked at my phone. It sat on the cushion where I had thrown it. It was silent. No frantic calls. No delete that messages. She must have sent it and put her phone down. Or maybe she was driving. I was wide awake now. The exhaustion from the workday had evaporated, replaced by a cold, crystalline clarity. My hands were shaking, but my mind was racing. I grabbed my mouse and clicked Save As. I saved the video to my desktop. Then I saved it to my external hard drive. Then I uploaded it to a private cloud folder. I played it again. I listened to Jenna's laugh at the beginning. So mean but so true. I listened to the silence at the end. I do not like this. I watched the text bubbles appear. Marston Cole. Unstable. Evaluation. My heart hammered against my ribs. A frantic rhythm that echoed in my ears. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff. Looking down into a dark water I had always known was there but had never seen so clearly. They thought I was weak. They thought I was unwell. They thought they could manipulate me, pat me on the head, and sign away my autonomy while they cashed checks from the grandparents who had actually loved me. I looked at the photo of my mother on the contact list of my phone. The smile seemed predatory now. I wasn't off the rails. I was the most sober person in the family. I took my phone off the sofa. I didn't call Jenna. I didn't call my parents. I opened the video on my phone, the one she had sent. I took screenshots of every single frame where text was visible. My father's words, my mother's plan, the name of the law firm. I sat there in the dark, the blue light of the screen illuminating my face, tears finally pricking at the corners of my eyes. Not from sadness, but from a fury so hot it felt like it could burn the building down. You want unstable? I whispered to the empty room. I looked at the timestamp on the chat in the video. Today, 6:45 p.m., while I was working, while I was building a career they pretended didn't matter. I wiped my eyes. I stood up and walked to the window. Looking out at the streetlights of Ridgeview, the city looked the same as it had an hour ago. But my world had fundamentally shifted. The ground beneath me was gone. I turned back to the computer. I opened a new document. I named it Timeline. I didn't know what I was going to do yet. I didn't know how to fight a family that had known me since birth. A family that knew exactly where to press to make me bleed. But I knew one thing. I wasn't signing anything. I watched the end of the video one last time. Jenna's face. The fear. I do not like this. I closed the laptop, the snap echoing in the quiet room. Neither do I. Jenna, I said softly, neither do I. Sleep did not come. It hovered on the edges of the room like a ghost, unwilling to settle. I lay in my bed, staring at the ceiling where a streetlight cast a long, distorted rectangle of orange against the plaster. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the chat bubbles. Unstable, unwell, Marston Cole. When the sun finally dragged itself up over the horizon, turning the sky a bruised purple and then a pale, sickly gray, I gave up. I threw the duvet off my legs and walked into the kitchen. My body felt heavy, leaden, as if gravity had doubled overnight. I made coffee. It was a ritual, usually a comforting one. The grind of the beans, the hiss of the water, the smell of dark roast filling the small apartment. Today, I moved like a machine. I poured the black liquid into a mug and sat down at the table where my laptop still sat open. The screen dark. I tapped the spacebar. The screen flared to life. The video file was still there. Center stage. Jenna_screenrecord.mp4. I took a sip of coffee. It burned my tongue, but I welcomed the sharp sensation. It was real. This was real. I pressed play. I watched it again and again. I needed to desensitize myself to the shock of it so I could see the data. I was an analyst. That was what I did. I took messy, chaotic information and found the pattern. I needed to find the pattern in my own destruction. I paused the video at the very top of the scroll. Family core. I took a screenshot. I scrolled forward 2 seconds. A message from my mother. Elaine. She sounded manic on the phone yesterday. I told Thomas we need to speed this up. I looked at the timestamp on the message in the video. November 14th, 7:32 in the evening. I opened my phone and scrolled back through my call history. November 14th. I found the entry. Incoming call. Mom. Duration. 12 minutes. I remembered that call. I closed my eyes, forcing the memory to surface. I had been excited. I had just closed the deal with the logistics firm. The one I was working on last night. I had told her about it, speaking fast because I was proud, because I wanted her to say, "Good job, Madeline." I remembered her silence on the other end. I remembered her saying, "You sound very intense, Madeline. Are you sleeping? You know how you get when you are spiraling." I hadn't been spiraling. I had been happy. But in the group chat, mere minutes after hanging up, she had logged it as manic. She had turned my joy into a symptom. I took another screenshot. I pressed play again. The video scrolled past a photo of me from Christmas 2 years ago. I was sitting in the corner of the living room, looking at my phone. My cousin Mike had captioned it. The moody teenager routine never gets old. 30 years old and still sulking. I remembered that moment, too. I hadn't been sulking. I had been looking up a recipe for the glazing on the ham because my mother was panicking that it was drying out, and I was trying to save dinner. They rewrote everything. Every kindness I offered was weakness. Every moment of silence was depression. Every moment of joy was mania. I paused again near the end of the video. On the text from my father, "We have to handle the house and accounts before Mad goes off the rails again. We cannot risk her controlling the estate." And then, a message I had missed last night, buried under a reaction emoji from Aunt Sarah. "Did you find Grandma's letter? We cannot let Madeline see it. If she sees what was written about the Ridgeview house, she will have grounds to contest the trust." I froze. Grandma's letter, my grandmother, Lydia, had been a force of nature. She was stern but fair, and she had a laugh that could shake a room. When she died, my father told me she had been too sick to write anything, that she had slipped away in a fog of dementia. The Ridgeview house. My grandparents had lived in a sprawling Victorian house on the edge of town. I loved that house. It smelled of cedar and old paper. After the funeral, my parents told me the bank had taken it. They said the reverse mortgage had eaten up all the equity, and there was nothing left. I had driven past it a month ago and saw a sold sign, assuming it was the bank offloading it. But if the bank took it, why would my controlling it be a risk? If there was no equity, what was there to control? My heart began to hammer a frantic rhythm against my ribs. They lied. They lied about the house. They lied about the money. And they lied about a letter. I grabbed my phone. My thumb hovered over Jenna's name. I needed to know where she stood. The video ended with her fear. With that whispered, "I do not like this." But she was also in the chat. She was participating. She was the one who recorded it. I typed, my fingers trembling slightly. Jenna, did you mean to send me that video last night? I stared at the screen, waiting. It was 7:15 in the morning. Jenna would be up getting the twins ready for school. She always had her phone in her hand. 3 minutes passed. Then, the 3 little dots of typing appeared. They bubbled for a long time, then vanished, then appeared again. A message popped up. OMG, no, I am so sorry, Mads. Then another. Ignore that. Serious. It was just a joke that landed wrong. Mike sent that meme, and we were all just venting after a long week. You know how Dad gets with his dark humor. Do not read into it. I stared at the words. Dark humor. Calling your daughter unstable and plotting to seize an estate was dark humor? The messages vanished. This message has been deleted. This message has been deleted. She was scrubbing the chat. My phone rang. Jenna's face filled the screen. I cleared my throat, trying to find a voice that sounded like the Madeline of yesterday. Oblivious, responsible, boring Madeline. I answered, Hey, Mads, oh my God. I am so embarrassed, Jenna said. Her voice was pitched high, breathless. It sounded like tinfoil crinkling. I was trying to forward that to Mark because we were arguing about his mother, and I clicked your name by mistake. And honestly, I did not even look at what was in the screen recording properly. It was just stupid family drama. You know how Mom and Dad are. They get grumpy and say things they do not mean. She was talking too fast. She was throwing words at me like sandbags, trying to build a wall before I could ask a question. I saw the texts. Jenna, I said quietly. They were talking about a lawyer, Marston and Cole. Jenna laughed. A sharp, brittle sound. Oh, that. That is just Dad being dramatic about his own estate planning. You know he thinks he is a Rockefeller. He wants to make sure everything is set up for Mom. He just worries about everyone. He thinks you work too hard and get stressed. That is all. It comes from a place of love. I promise. Love. The word tasted like ash. And the part about me being unstable? I asked. The part about an evaluation? Jenna paused. I could hear the background noise on her end. Children shouting, a TV blaring cartoons. Mads, you are overthinking it, she said, her voice dropping to a soothing coo that she probably used on the twins. You know you have been distant lately. They just worry. Sometimes they use the wrong words. Look, I have to get the boys in the car. Just delete the video, okay? It is meaningless. I love you. Do not let it ruin your day. She hung up before I could respond. I lowered the phone. She was gaslighting me. My own sister. The one who whispered I do not like this to herself in the dark was now trying to convince me that the sky was green and the grass was blue. She was scared. She was scared of them, or scared of losing her spot as the golden child. I stood up. The apartment felt too small. The walls were closing in. I needed to move. I needed to do something. I looked at the calendar on the wall. Today was my father's birthday. 62. I had bought him a gift 3 weeks ago. A first edition of a history book on the Civil War. Something I had tracked down online because I knew he loved that era. It was wrapped in navy blue paper, sitting on my dresser. I was supposed to go over for dinner on Saturday, but today was the actual birthday. If I went now, in the morning, I could catch them off guard. I dressed quickly, pulling on a pair of tailored trousers and a silk blouse, my armor. I needed to look pulled together. I needed to look like the opposite of unstable. I grabbed the book, I grabbed my keys, and then, on an impulse I couldn't quite name, I grabbed my portable battery charger and a USB drive. The drive to my parents' house took 20 minutes. It was a drive I had done 1,000 times. Autopilot taking over as I navigated the leafy suburban streets of Ridgeview. The houses here were large, set back from the road behind manicured lawns. It was a quiet, respectable neighborhood where people smiled with their teeth and kept their secrets behind heavy oak doors. I pulled into the driveway. My father's car was gone. He had likely gone to the golf course or the hardware store. His usual Wednesday routine. My mother's SUV was there. I took a deep breath. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles were white. Showtime. Madeline. I got out of the car. Smoothing my shirt, I walked up the path, the book tucked under my arm. I rang the doorbell. It took a moment. Then the door opened. Elaine stood there, wearing her gardening gloves and a wide-brimmed hat. She looked surprised, her eyes darting to the driveway as if checking for backup. "Madeline?" she said. "What are you doing here? You are supposed to be at work." I forced a smile. It felt like stretching a rubber band until it was about to snap. I had a client meeting nearby that got canceled. I lied smoothly, and I realized I wouldn't be able to bring Dad's gift on Saturday because, well, I might have to work late this weekend. So I thought I would drop it off on his actual birthday. Elaine hesitated, then stepped back. "Well, that is thoughtful. Come in. I was just out back with the roses. The aphids are terrible this year." I stepped into the house. The smell hit me instantly. Lemon polish, potpourri, and something stagnant, like old air conditioning. It was the smell of my childhood. "Where is Dad?" I asked, walking into the kitchen. "Golf," Elaine said, peeling off her gloves. "He will be back for lunch. Do you want tea? I suppose you cannot stay long if you are working." "I would love some water," I said. She nodded and turned to the sink. I scanned the room. The kitchen was pristine, as always. Granite countertops, stainless steel appliances that looked like they had never been used. And there, sitting on the island, plugged into a charger, was my mother's old tablet. It was an older model, one she had complained about being slow but refused to replace. The screen was dark. I watched my mother's back. She was filling a glass with water, looking out the window at the bird feeder. I stepped closer to the island. Elaine hummed a little tune. She was distracted. I tapped the screen of the tablet. It lit up. Enter passcode. I knew my mother. She was a creature of habit, and she believed that complicated passwords were a nuisance invented by technology companies to annoy her. She used the same numbers for everything. The alarm code, her bank PIN, her phone. I typed in 1994, Jenna's birth year. The screen shuddered. Incorrect passcode. I frowned. Maybe she had changed it? I glanced at Elaine. She was wiping the glass with a paper towel. I tried 0704. Jenna's birthday, July 4th. The tablet unlocked. My stomach twisted. Of course, it was always Jenna. The screen opened to the last used app. It was the messaging app, and there it was. Family Core. The chat was active. The timestamp on the last message was 10 minutes ago. My heart hammered in my throat. I glanced at my mother. She was opening the fridge now, looking for a lemon slice. I looked down at the tablet. My father had posted a photo. It was a picture of a document. I tapped it to enlarge. It was a legal document. Authorization for temporary management of financial affairs. I scanned the text. It granted Thomas Bryant full power of attorney over the assets of Madeline Bryant, effective immediately upon the signature of the principal, due to incapacitation or medical necessity. At the bottom of the page, on the line marked Signature of Principal, was a scrawl of black ink. Madeline Bryant. I stopped breathing. It was my signature. The loop of the M, the sharp cross of the T. It looked exactly like my handwriting, but I had never seen this document in my life. Below the photo, my father had typed, "The scan looks good. I just need to get her to re-sign in person for the official version so the notary can stamp it. We will tell her it is the insurance paperwork for the therapy evaluation." Elaine had replied, "Make sure the top is covered when she signs. She reads everything." Jenna had replied, "I feel sick about this." Thomas had replied, "You will feel better when your debt is cleared. Sweetheart, keep your eye on the prize." I felt the room sway. They weren't just manipulating me. They were forging my signature. They were committing a crime. And Jenna was in debt? Your debt is cleared. That was the leverage. That was why she was helping. I heard the fridge door close. I quickly minimized the photo and scrolled up. Elaine had written yesterday, "We need to prep for the wellness talk. When we sit her down, we need specific incidents. Remind her of the time she cried at Thanksgiving 2 years ago. Thomas, and when she quit that job in Chicago, frame it as a breakdown. Elaine, use her therapy against her. Tell her that her therapist called us. She won't know it is a lie. Tell her the therapist agrees she needs residential care." I felt a wave of nausea so strong I had to grip the edge of the granite island, use her therapy against her, the one place I had gone to heal from their damage, and they were weaponizing it to lock me away. I pulled my phone from my pocket. I kept my body angled away from the sink, shielding the tablet with my torso. I snapped a photo of the chat log. Scroll, snap, scroll, snap. I got the forgery. I got the debt comment. I got the plan to lie about my therapist. "Here is your water," Elaine said. I jumped, just slightly. I shoved my phone into my pocket and swiped the tablet screen off. I turned around. My face felt hot, flushed. "Thank you," I said. My voice sounded remarkably steady, considering my world was collapsing. I took the glass. My hand was shaking. I gripped it tight to hide the tremor. Elaine looked at me. Her eyes narrowed slightly. "You look pale. Madeline, are you eating enough? You have those dark circles under your eyes again." It was the opening, the script. "I am fine. Mom," I said, "just working hard." "You always say that." She sighed, leaning against the counter, blocking my exit. "But we worry. Your father and I were talking just the other night. We think you might be taking on too much. You know, there is no shame in asking for help." She was doing it right now. She was reciting the lines I had just read on the screen. "I know." I stammered. I looked at the clock on the stove. Suddenly, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a notification from a news app, but I seized it like a lifeline. I pulled it out and pretended to read a text. "Oh no," I said, injecting panic into my voice. "What is it?" Elaine asked. "The server." I said, "The client server just went down. I have to go. I have to get back to my laptop immediately or we lose the data." Elaine rolled her eyes. "Always a crisis," she muttered. "Well, leave the book. I will tell your father you stopped by." I put the book on the counter. "Happy birthday to Dad," I said. I turned and walked out. I didn't run. Though every nerve in my body was screaming at me to sprint, I walked at a measured pace to the front door, opened it, and stepped out into the cool morning air. I got into my car. I locked the doors. I started the engine and reversed out of the driveway. I drove 2 blocks, turned a corner, and pulled over under the shade of a large oak tree. I put the car in park and let out a sound that was half scream, half sob. I slammed my hands against the steering wheel. They forged my signature. They were going to lock me up. I grabbed my phone and dialed April. She answered on the second ring. "Maddie? What's up? You never call at this time." I couldn't speak. A sob ripped through my chest, ragged and painful. "Maddie?" April's voice shifted instantly from casual to alert. "Where are you? What happened? They are not who I thought they were." I choked out. "Who? Your parents? They are trying to commit me." "April, they forged my signature. I saw it. I saw the chat. Whoa, slow down. Commit you? What are you talking about?" I told her. I told her everything, the words spilling out of me in a chaotic, terrified rush, the video, the tablet, the incidents, the estate, Jenna's debt. I feel like I have been living in a simulation. I cried, tears streaming down my face, blurring the dashboard. They have this whole other reality where I am the villain and the invalid, and they have been building it for years, and I believed them. "April, I believed I was the difficult one." April was silent for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was low and deadly serious. "Maddie, listen to me. You are not crazy. You are the sanest person I know. You are coming to my place tonight. Do not go back to them. Do not answer their calls. You have the photos?" "Yes," I whispered. "Good. That is evidence. That is fraud. We are going to burn them down. Maddie. But right now, you need to breathe. Can you drive?" "I think so." "Then drive to work. Act normal. Do not let them know you know. If they think they have the upper hand, they will get sloppy. You are the smart one. Remember? You are the analyst. Analyze them. Analyze them." I wiped my face with the back of my hand. She was right. Panic would get me killed. Or worse, institutionalized. Strategy would save me. I will, I said. I hung up. I sat there for another 10 minutes, watching a squirrel run along the telephone wire. It looked so carefree. I checked my makeup in the rearview mirror. My eyes were red, but nothing a little concealer couldn't fix. I put the car in drive. That night, my apartment felt different. It felt like a bunker. I had ordered takeout but couldn't eat it. The carton sat cold on the counter. I was at my desk. I had created a new folder on my laptop, encrypted with a password that was a random string of 20 characters. Inside, I had subfolders: video logs, chat screenshots, forged documents, financials. I uploaded the photos I had taken from the tablet. The resolution was good. You could clearly see the signature. You could clearly see my father's profile picture next to the admission of the forgery. I opened the original video again, the one Jenna sent. I had watched it 50 times, but this time, I watched it with the knowledge of what I had seen on the tablet: Jenna's debt. You will feel better when your debt is cleared. Sweetheart, Jenna wasn't just the golden child. She was the trapped child. She was in deep financial trouble, and my parents were bailing her out in exchange for her complicity in destroying me. I fast-forwarded to the end of the video, the last frame. I zoomed in on Jenna's face. The pixelation made it a bit blurry, but the expression was unmistakable. Her eyes were rimmed with red. Her mascara was slightly smudged on the lower lash line. She had been crying before she recorded that video. And that whisper, "I do not like this." It wasn't a joke. It wasn't dark humor. It was the sound of someone who had sold their soul and was realizing the price was too high. She was scared. I leaned back in my chair. Jenna was the weak link. My parents were the architects, sociopathic in their certainty. But Jenna was crumbling. I looked at the screenshot of her face. If I pushed her, she might break. But if I pushed too hard, she might retreat behind my parents' wall of protection. I needed to be careful. I closed the laptop. I walked to the window and looked out at the city. Somewhere out there, in that big house with the lemon smell. My parents were sleeping soundly, confident that their plan was working. They thought I was the unstable daughter, the easy mark. They had no idea that I had the receipts. I touched the cold glass of the window. "You want a war?" I whispered into the darkness. I turned away from the window. "You got one." The business card for Marston Cole Law Group was a digital image I had screenshotted from the video, pixelated and slightly blurry, but the phone number was legible. I sat in my car during my lunch break, the engine idling to run the heater against the biting Midwestern chill. My phone felt heavy in my hand, like a loaded weapon I was terrified to fire. I had spent the morning functioning on autopilot. I answered emails, built pivot tables, and nodded during a team meeting, all while a separate processor in my brain replayed the chat logs I had seen on my mother's tablet. We cannot risk her controlling the estate. Estate. The word implied value. It implied something left behind. My parents had told me, with somber faces and heavy sighs, that Grandma and Grandpa had died with nothing but debt. They claimed the sale of the house barely covered the outstanding medical bills. I had believed them because why would I not? They were my parents. They were the people who were supposed to protect me from the harsh realities of the world, not manufacture them. I dialed the number. The line rang twice. Marston and Cole. "How may I direct your call?" "A professional." Bright voice answered. I took a breath, staring at a stain on my steering wheel. "Hello?" I said, keeping my voice steady. "My name is Madeline Bryant. I am calling regarding the estate of Arthur and Lydia Bryant. I understand your firm is handling the administration." There was a pause. The typing of a keyboard clattered in the background. "One moment, please. Ms. Bryant, let me pull up the file." I waited. The silence stretched for 30 seconds, then 40. My heart began to thump a hard, anxious rhythm against my ribs. Had my parents already blocked me? Had they told the firm I was incompetent? "Ms. Bryant?" The voice returned, sounding slightly more guarded. "I have the file here. You are listed as a beneficiary. How can I help you?" The air left my lungs in a rush. Beneficiary. I closed my eyes. They had lied. It was not a misunderstanding. It was not a miscommunication. It was a lie. I am just calling to clarify the status of the proceedings. I said, forcing a casual tone I did not feel. I have been out of the loop recently due to work, and my father, Thomas Bryant, mentioned there was some paperwork pending. I wanted to check if there was anything I needed to review personally. There was another pause. Well, yes, the receptionist said, her voice lowering slightly. There is a note here regarding an amendment. Mr. Cole has been drafting a trust agreement based on concerns expressed by the family regarding asset management. We were waiting on, a medical evaluation before finalizing the transfer of the Ridgeview property and the investment portfolio. The Ridgeview property. They hadn't sold it. The house, the beautiful, cedar-scented Victorian where I had learned to bake bread and ride a bike, was still there. And the investment portfolio. I gripped the phone tighter. I see, I said, and just for my own records, as I seem to have misplaced the original summary, I am the primary beneficiary of those assets? Yes, the woman said. The original will designate you as the sole beneficiary of the real estate and the primary investment account. Your father is listed as the executor, but the assets pass to you. The proposed amendment would shift that to a managed trust under his control. Sole beneficiary. My grandparents had left me everything, and my parents were trying to steal it by declaring me crazy. Thank you, I said, my voice sounding hollow to my own ears. I think I need to come in and speak to Mr. Cole directly, before any amendments are signed. Actually, Mr. Cole has a slot open this afternoon at 4, she said. He has been anxious to speak with you. He has left a few messages at the number we have on file, but we never heard back. What number is that? I asked. It ends in 4582. That was my father's cell phone number. Of course. I said, I will be there at 4. I hung up. I sat in the silence of my car, watching people walk into the sandwich shop across the street. Normal people living normal lives where their parents didn't redirect legal calls to their own phones. I went back to work, packed up my laptop, and told my manager I had a family emergency. It wasn't a lie. The emergency was that my family was a crime syndicate. The offices of Marston Cole were located in a glass-fronted building downtown, the kind with marble floors and a security guard who made you sign in. I wore my charcoal suit, the one I wore for board presentations. I pulled my hair back into a severe, sleek bun. I needed to look like Madeline Bryant, senior marketing analyst, not Madeline Bryant, the unstable daughter. Mr. Cole was a man in his 60s with silver hair and eyes that looked like they had seen every variety of human greed. He met me in the conference room, not his office. He did not smile when he shook my hand. Ms. Bryant, he said, it is good to finally meet you. I must admit, you are not what I expected. What did you expect? I asked, sitting down and placing my leather notebook on the mahogany table. He sat opposite me, folding his hands. Based on your father's descriptions, I expected someone less composed. He has been very insistent that you are going through a severe mental health crisis. He claims you are unable to comprehend complex financial documents and that you are prone to erratic outbursts. I looked him in the eye. Mr. Cole, I have been a data analyst for 8 years. I manage million-dollar marketing budgets. I own my car. I pay my rent. I have never been hospitalized. I have never been arrested. The only crisis I'm currently experiencing is discovering that my parents have been lying to me about my grandparents' death for 4 months. Mr. Cole studied me. He was a lawyer. He dealt in facts, not emotions. He looked at my suit, my notebook, my steady hands. He opened the file folder in front of him. Your grandparents, Arthur and Lydia, were clients of mine for 30 years, he said softly. They were very specific about their wishes. When they drafted their final will last year, your father was unhappy. He felt that the estate should go to him, as the son. And what did they say? I asked. Mr. Cole pulled a creamy piece of stationery from the file. They said that Thomas had enough, he said, and they said that you were the one who needed to be free. He slid the paper across the table. "This was included with the will," he said. "It is addressed to you. I was instructed to give it to you when we read the will. But, well, your father told me you were in a residential facility and could not receive visitors. He said he would deliver it when you were better. I have been holding on to it, waiting for confirmation." I reached out and took the letter. My hand trembled. Just once. I recognized the handwriting immediately. It was my grandmother's looping, elegant script. "My dearest Madeline, if you are reading this, it means we have gone on to whatever comes next. Do not be sad for too long. We had a wonderful life, and the best part of the last 30 years was watching you grow. We know things have never been easy for you in that house. We saw how you tried to make yourself small to fit into the spaces they left for you. We saw how you gave and gave, even when you received nothing in return. We are leaving you the house in Ridgeview and the savings we built up, not because we want to burden you with things, but because we want to give you choices. Your father is a man who believes control is the same thing as love. It is not. We trust you to build a life you choose, without strings attached. You are stronger than you think. Madeline, you are the oak tree in a garden of weeds. Stand tall. Love. Grandma and Grandpa." I read the line, "You are the oak tree in a garden of weeds," 3 times. A lump formed in my throat, hot and hard. They had known. All those Sunday dinners where I thought I was hiding my pain. Hiding the way my parents critiqued my eating. My clothes. My laugh. They had seen it. I looked up at Mr. Cole. I blinked back the tears. I would not cry in this room. They told me there was no will. I said, "They told me the house was sold to pay debts." Mr. Cole's face tightened. "There are no debts. Mrs. Bryant, the estate is valued at roughly $800,000. Including the property, the house is currently empty. Your father has the keys." He leaned forward. "Listen to me carefully," he said. "Your father has been pushing very hard for this amendment. He wants to be named the trustee of your inheritance. He claims it is for your protection. He has brought in your sister, Jenna, to corroborate his stories about your episodes." "Jenna," I whispered. "She came in 2 weeks ago." Mr. Cole confirmed. "She sat in that chair and told me that you had been spending money recklessly and that you were hearing voices." Hearing voices. The betrayal felt like a physical blow to the stomach. It was one thing to say I was depressed. It was another to invent hallucinations. That was a specific, calculated lie designed to strip me of my legal rights. I took a deep breath. "I am not hearing voices, Mr. Cole, and I am not signing any trust agreement. I did not think so," he said. He closed the folder. "I have been delaying them. I told your father I could not proceed without a medical evaluation signed by a licensed psychiatrist. I think he assumed he could. Find one. He is trying to trick me into one." I said, "He has a document he wants me to sign. He calls it a wellness check." Mr. Cole nodded grimly. "Do not sign anything. And Ms. Bryant? If I were you, I would secure the property. It is yours. The deed is in your name as of the date of death. Probate is nearly closed. You do not need their permission to enter your own house." I stood up. I felt taller than I had when I walked in. I had the truth now. It was in black and white, written in my grandmother's hand. "Can I take a copy of the estate documents?" I asked. "I will give you the originals." "Mr. Cole said, "I am technically your lawyer. Mrs. Bryant, not your father's." I walked out of the building with a thick envelope tucked under my arm. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the city. I felt a strange sense of dissociation. As if I were watching myself from above, I was walking, breathing, functioning, but the Madeline who had just wanted her parents to be proud of her was gone. She had died in that conference room. I checked my phone. I had a text from Elaine. "Coffee? I am near your office. Would love to see your face. It was a trap. I knew it was a trap." She wanted to gauge my mood, see if I was ripe for the wellness talk. I texted back. "Sure. The Starbucks on 4th. 10 minutes. I needed to see her. I needed to look her in the face with the knowledge I now possessed. I needed to see if she would flinch. Elaine was sitting at a corner table, nursing a latte. She looked impeccable in a beige cashmere cardigan, her hair perfectly coiffed. She smiled when she saw me, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. It never did. "Madeline!" she chirped, standing up to give me a stiff hug. You look a little tired." "Honey," I sat down, placing my bag on the floor. The envelope with the will was inside it, resting against my leg. "It has been a long week." "Mom," I said, "work is intense." Elaine nodded sympathetically. "That is what we worry about. You work so hard. You take everything so seriously. You know, I was telling your father. Madeline needs a break. She needs someone to take care of her for a change. Here it comes." I took a sip of my black coffee. "What do you mean?" Elaine leaned in, lowering her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "We have been looking into some options, just to help you. There are these wonderful programs, wellness retreats really, where you can just rest, and we were thinking, maybe it would help if you didn't have to worry about your bills and things for a while. Your father, he is so good with money. He could handle the boring stuff so you can focus on getting better." "Getting better from what?" I asked calmly. Elaine faltered for a second. "Well, from the stress, from, your moods. We have all noticed you have been a bit up and down lately. The way you reacted to Jenna's birthday dinner, you were very emotional. I had been emotional at Jenna's birthday dinner because my mother had announced in front of 20 people that I was still single, because I was too intimidating for men. I had left the table to cry in the bathroom. "I see," I said. "So, Dad would just handle my accounts? Just for a little while," Elaine said, her eyes lighting up. "Just until you feel more like yourself. We would just need you to sign something simple, a formality. Really, just so the bank talks to him." I watched her face. I saw the greed there, naked and ugly. It wasn't just about the money, it was about the control. She wanted me to be the broken child because if I was broken, she was the saint who took care of me. "And what about Grandma's estate?" I asked. The question hung in the air. Elaine didn't blink, but her hand tightened around her cup. "Grandma's estate?" she said with a light laugh. "Oh, honey, you know there wasn't anything left. Just a few trinkets. We donated most of it. Why do you ask?" She lied so easily. It was effortless. I was thinking about her. I said, "I missed her." Elaine sighed. "We all do. But we have to move forward. So, about this paperwork. Your father drafted something up. Maybe we could bring it over to dinner on Saturday? We could just get it out of the way." I forced myself to nod. I forced myself to look submissive, tired, defeated. "Maybe," I said. "I am just so overwhelmed. Mom, maybe having Dad help would be good." Elaine exhaled, a sound of pure victory. "Oh, Madeline, that is so mature of you. It really is. We just want to save you from yourself." I finished my coffee. I had to leave before I threw up. "I have to get back," I said. I walked away from the table. I could feel her eyes on my back, satisfied, predatory. She thought she had won. She thought the mouse had walked right into the trap, but the mouse had a copy of the will. I drove to the parking lot of the elementary school where Jenna's twins went. It was 5 o'clock. Pickup was over. But Jenna often stayed late for the PTA meetings she ran with an iron fist. I saw her SUV parked near the playground. She was standing by the trunk, loading boxes of decorations. I pulled up right next to her. I didn't park in a spot. I just blocked her in. I got out. Jenna looked up, startled. "Mads? What are you doing here?" She looked tired. The perfect makeup was cracking. There was a frantic energy to her movements. "We need to talk." "Jenna." I said, "Not here," she hissed, looking around. "The other moms." "I do not care about the other moms." I said, my voice rising. "I care about the fact that you told a lawyer I hear voices." Jenna went white. The box of decorations slid from her hands and hit the asphalt with a dull thud. She stared at me, her mouth opening and closing. "Who told you that?" she whispered. "I went to Marston and Cole today." I said, stepping closer. "I saw the lawyer. I saw the will. I know about the house. I know about the money. And I know that you sat in a chair and told a man that your sister is schizophrenic so our parents could steal $800,000. Jenna leaned back against her car, as if her legs had given out. Tears welled up in her eyes instantly. "Mads, please," she choked out. "You do not understand. Make me understand." I said. I felt cold. Hard. "Tell me why you did it." "They made me," she sobbed. "Mom and Dad. They said if I didn't help them, they would cut me off. They know about the credit cards. Mads, they know about the investment Mark made that tanked. We are broke. We are drowning. So you decided to drown me instead?" I asked. "It wasn't supposed to be like this." Jenna cried. "Dad said it was just a technicality. He said the money should have been his anyway. He said you wouldn't even notice, that he would give you an allowance. He said you were actually sick. He made me believe it. Mads," he kept saying. "Remember how she acted at Christmas? Remember how she is?" And after a while, I thought maybe he was right. You knew he wasn't right. I said, "That is why you whispered to yourself in the car." "I do not like this." Jenna froze. She looked at me with wide, terrified eyes. "You saw the end," she whispered. "I saw it all. Jenna, I saw the chat. I saw the forgery. I saw the plan." She covered her face with her hands, sliding down the side of the car until she was crouching on the pavement. "I am sorry," she wailed. "I am so sorry. I just wanted it to stop. The calls, the guilt trips, the constant pressure. They call me 5 times a day. Mads, asking if I have talked to you, if I have planted the seed. I cannot take it anymore." "Then stop taking it," I said. "Stand up." Jenna looked up at me, mascara running down her cheeks. "I can't," she whispered. "They own me. They paid off the first credit card bill last week. If I turn on them, they will tell Mark. They will destroy my marriage." She reached out and grabbed my hand. Her grip was clammy. "Mads, please, just sign the evaluation. Just do it. If you sign it, they get the money, and they will leave us alone. They will be happy. We can go back to being a family. It doesn't mean anything. It is just paper." I looked down at her. I looked at the sister I had protected on the playground, the sister I had tutored in math. She was begging me to sign away my sanity so she didn't have to face the consequences of her own life. She wasn't a victim. She was a collaborator. I pulled my hand away. "It is not just paper, Jenna," I said quietly. "It is my life. It is my freedom, and I am not setting myself on fire to keep you warm." I turned around and walked back to my car. Jenna scrambled up. "Mads!" she screamed. "Mads! Wait!" I opened my car door. "I didn't mean to send the video," she shouted. I paused. I looked back at her. She was standing in the empty parking lot, looking small and desperate. "I didn't mean to send it," she said, her voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "But I didn't stop it either. I saw your name. I saw it was sending. And for a second, just a second, I let it go." "Why?" I asked. "Because I knew you were the only one strong enough to stop them," she said. I stared at her. It was the most honest thing she had said in years. I got into my car and slammed the door. I didn't look back as I drove away. My phone sat on the passenger seat. The folder with the will lay next to it. I was strong enough. They wanted a fight? They wanted to talk about who was stable and who was unfit? I touched the envelope. I was going to show them exactly what I was capable of. I drove toward Ridgeview. I wasn't going home to my apartment. I was going to the house, my house. I needed to see what else they were hiding, and I needed to change the locks. The waiting room of the Everline Counseling Center smelled faintly of eucalyptus and white noise machines. It was a neutral space, aggressively beige, designed to be calming but feeling, to me, like a holding cell. I sat on a linen armchair, my hands clasped tightly in my lap, watching the second hand on the wall clock tick past the 12. I was here for a strategy session. Though on the intake form I had simply written general evaluation, when Dr. Aris Thorne called my name. He looked nothing like the severe, clipboard-wielding psychiatrists my father had threatened me with in my childhood. He was a younger man with kind eyes and a sweater that looked well worn. His office was small, filled with books and a large window overlooking a small courtyard. I sat down, placing my bag on the floor. I did not want to cry. I wanted data. I need to know if I'm crazy, I said. I did not bother with a preamble. Doctor, Thorne raised an eyebrow, settling into his chair. That is a heavy question for a Tuesday morning. Why do you ask? Because my family says I am. I said, my voice steady. They say I have episodes. They say I'm unstable. They are planning to have me declared incompetent to manage my own affairs. I need an objective, third-party professional to tell me if they are right. If I am sick, I want to know. If I am not, I need it on paper. For the next 3 sessions, I treated Dr. Thorne like a repository for 32 years of evidence. I did not tell him about the scheme, the money, or the chat logs at first. I simply told him about the life I had lived. I told him about the time I was 7 and cried because I dropped my ice cream. And my father told me I was hysterical and sent me to my room until I could act like a human being. I told him about my high school graduation, where I was valedictorian. My mother had sighed during the car ride home and said, "It is a shame you are so intense about your grades. Madeline, it makes you unapproachable. Look at Jenna. She barely passed math, but she was voted prom queen. People like her." I told him how every boundary I set was called aggression, how every time I expressed hurt, it was labeled drama, how I had learned to shrink, to silence my own voice, to become a gray rock in the corner of the room, just to avoid the spotlight of their criticism. Doctor. Thorne listened, taking notes in a leather-bound journal. He asked probing questions, peeling back the layers of my history like an onion. By the end of the 2nd week, he set his pen down. Madeline, he said, I have run the standard diagnostic assessments. I have analyzed our conversations. I see no evidence of a personality disorder. I see no evidence of mania, psychosis, or the instability your family claims. I felt a weight lift off my chest, so heavy I hadn't realized I was suffocating under it. Then what is wrong with me? I asked. Why do I feel like I'm always waiting for the other shoe to drop? You have anxiety, he said gently, but it is not a disorder born of chemical imbalance. It is a survival mechanism. You exhibit signs of hypervigilance consistent with long-term emotional invalidation. You are not unstable. Madeline, you are exhausted. You have spent your entire life trying to predict the weather in a house where the climate was controlled by people who refused to let you shine. I stared at the rug. Hypervigilance. So I am sane? I asked. You are incredibly sane, he said. In fact, given the environment you have described, your resilience is remarkable. If you were a building, I would say your foundation is solid, but you have been weathering a hurricane for 3 decades. I left the clinic with a sealed letter in my purse. It was a formal summary of his findings, stating clearly that I was competent, oriented, and free of any disqualifying mental health conditions. It was my shield. That night, April came over. She brought a bottle of red wine and a label maker. We turned my living room into a war room. April was the general I needed. While I was prone to analyzing the emotional cost, April was ready to scorch the earth. She paced back and forth in front of my coffee table, where I had spread out the printed screenshots, the estate documents, and the copy of the forged signature. This is not a family, April said, gesturing with her wine glass. This is a cartel. Look at this timeline, Maddie. We had drawn a timeline on a large piece of poster board. August, grandparents pass away. September, parents tell Madeline there is no money. October, Jenna joins the family core chat. November, the Marston and Cole strategy begins. The forgery is created. I picked up the photo of the forged document. The signature looked so much like mine. It made my stomach turn every time I looked at it. We need to digitize everything, April said. If they find out you know, they might try to wipe the devices. We need backups of backups. We spent 4 hours scanning and organizing. Folder A. The lie. This contained the chat logs where they discussed gaslighting me, the memes, the insults. Folder B. The motive, the estate documents, the appraisal of the Ridgeview house which I had pulled from public records, valued at $850,000, and the investment summaries. Folder C. The crime, the forgery. April picked up a screenshot I had taken from the tablet just 2 days ago. It was a conversation between Thomas and Jenna. Thomas: do not worry about the Amex bill. Once the trust is settled, we will clear that up. And the crypto mess. Just keep Madeline calm until the dinner. April looked at me, her eyes wide. The crypto mess? She asked. I nodded. Jenna invested $15,000 in some coin her husband's friend told her about. It went to zero in a week. She told me about it months ago. Swearing me to secrecy, she was terrified Mark would find out. So they are buying her, April said, disgusted. They are paying off her bad decisions with your inheritance. It makes sense, I said, staring at the screen. Jenna isn't evil. She is weak, and she is desperate. They found the leverage point and they pressed it. I feel bad for her, I added softly. April slammed her hand on the table. No, you do not get to feel bad for her. She is 30 years old. Maddie, she is an accomplice. She saw you drowning and she handed them the hose. I knew April was right, but it still hurt. I kept monitoring them. It was a dangerous game, but I needed to know their next move. I visited my parents' house twice that week. The first time, I brought a bag of gourmet coffee beans as a peace offering. My mother was in the garden, and I managed to check the tablet in the kitchen for 3 minutes while the kettle boiled. The second time, I met Jenna for lunch. She went to the bathroom and left her phone on the table. I didn't need her passcode. Her notifications were set to display the full message. The family core chat was buzzing with preparations. My mother had posted a list, talking points for Saturday. Expressed concern about her physical appearance. You look so thin/tired. Bring up the Chicago incident. Reminder. Frame her quitting as a breakdown. Thomas to present the folder as insurance paperwork. Do not use the word legal if she cries. Offer comfort, but do not back down. Tears are a symptom. Jenna to reinforce. I signed one too. Mads, it is just for the family trust. I read the list on Jenna's locked screen, my heart hammering against my ribs. It was a script, a screenplay for my destruction. Jenna to reinforce. I signed one too. That was a lie. Jenna wasn't signing away her rights. Jenna was getting a bailout. When Jenna came back from the bathroom, wiping her hands, I smiled at her. You look nice today. I said, thanks, she said, avoiding my eyes. She looked jittery. She kept checking her watch. Are we still on for dinner Saturday? She asked. Mom is making roast beef. I wouldn't miss it, I said. I went home that evening and sat on the floor of my bedroom. I pulled 3 large photo albums from the bottom shelf of my bookcase. These were the albums I had taken when I moved out, duplicates my mother had made years ago. I opened the first one, summer 1998. We were at the lake house. There was a picture of the 4 of us on the dock. My father had his arm around my mother. My mother had her hand on Jenna's shoulder. Jenna was beaming, holding a fishing pole. And there I was, standing 2 feet to the left. I was wearing a life jacket, looking at the water, my arms crossed. I turned the page. Christmas 2003. Group photo in front of the tree. Jenna was sitting on my father's lap. My mother was leaning in close to them. I was standing behind the sofa. My head just visible, a forced smile on my face. I flipped through year after year. The pattern was undeniable. In every picture, there was a core group of 3, physically touching, leaning toward each other, a closed circuit of affection. And then there was me, the satellite, orbiting just outside the gravitational pull. I wasn't imagining the distance. It was documented in Kodak color. I looked at my posture in the photos. Shoulders hunched, hands in pockets, eyes watchful. Doctor. Thorne's words came back to me. Hypervigilance. I wasn't a sullen child. I was a child waiting to be scolded. I was a child who had learned that if I stood too close, I would be told I was in the way. I closed the album. A tear hit the leather cover. I grieved for that little girl. I grieved for the years I had spent trying to solve the puzzle of how to be loved by them, never realizing the puzzle was rigged from the start. On Thursday, I drove to my grandparents' old neighborhood. The house, my house, stood on a corner lot. It was a beautiful Queen Anne Victorian with a wraparound porch and a turret. A sold sign had been hammered into the lawn months ago, but now that I looked closely, I saw it wasn't a real realtor's sign. It was a generic one you could buy at a hardware store. Another lie, a visual prop to keep me away. I walked next door. Mrs. Penfield lived in the bungalow to the east. She was 81, a sharp-tongued woman who had been my grandmother's best friend for 40 years. She opened the door before I even knocked. "Madeline Bryant," she said, peering through the screen. "I wondered when you would show up." "Mrs. Penfield," I said. "I hope I'm not disturbing you." "Get in here," she said. "I have a kettle on." Her living room was cluttered with ceramic cats and cross-stitched pillows. It smelled of peppermint and old paper. She poured me a cup of tea and sat me down in a floral armchair that swallowed me whole. "You have been scarce," she said. "I was told." I hesitated. "I was told the house was sold. I thought there was no reason to come back." Mrs. Penfield snorted. "Sold? To who? The ghost of Christmas past? That house has been sitting empty since Lydia's funeral. Your father comes by once a week to check the mail and glare at the weeds. He told me the bank took it." I said. She shook her head, clinking her spoon against her china cup. "Your father is a piece of work. Always has been. He couldn't stand that Arthur and Lydia had money. He couldn't stand that they didn't hand it over to him the minute he turned 18. She looked at me over her spectacles. "Your grandmother worried about you. You know." I looked down into my tea. "She did?" "Endlessly. She used to sit right there where you are sitting and say, 'Elaine tries to break that girl's spirit like she is breaking a horse.'" My breath hitched. "She saw it?" I whispered. "We all saw it." "Honey," Mrs. Penfield said, "it wasn't exactly subtle. Jenna was the doll they played with. You were the project they critiqued. Lydia hated it. That is why she insisted you have your own key." "My own key?" "To the house," Mrs. Penfield said, "when you were 16. Do you remember?" "She gave you a key on a silver chain." I did remember. I had worn it for years until the chain broke. I still had the key in my jewelry box. "She told me," Mrs. Penfield said, her voice softening. She said, "Madeline must always have her own key, her own money, her own say, because if she relies on Thomas and Elaine, they will eat her alive." I set my cup down because my hands were shaking too hard to hold it. "They knew." I said, "They knew I would need an escape. They hoped you wouldn't." Mrs. Penfield said, "Penfield." "But they prepared for it. Arthur was adamant. He said, 'That girl is the only one in the family with a backbone. We have to make sure they don't surgically remove it.'" I left Mrs. Penfield's house an hour later. The sun was dipping below the horizon, painting the sky in streaks of violet and orange. I looked at the Victorian house next door. It wasn't just a house. It was a fortress my grandparents had built for me. It was their final act of protection. I drove home in silence. I felt a cold resolve settling in my bones. It was different from the anger I had felt earlier. Anger burned hot and fast. This was colder. This was steel. I was almost to my apartment when my phone rang. It was Mr. Cole? "Mrs. Bryant?" he said. "I apologize for calling so late." "Is everything okay?" I asked, pulling into my parking spot. I was going through the archived physical files today, preparing for the potential conflict. He said, "I found something. It was misfiled in the 1990 tax returns. It is a handwritten note from your grandfather, Arthur." "What does it say?" I asked. Mr. Cole cleared his throat. "It is dated 3 years ago. It seems he wrote it after a hospitalization. It says, 'If my son Thomas ever attempts to speak for Madeline, or if he claims she is unable to speak for herself. Let this note serve as my testimony. Madeline is capable. Thomas is greedy. Do not let the wolf guard the lamb. I closed my eyes, leaning my head against the headrest. Do not let the wolf guard the lamb. He wrote that? I asked. He did. Mr. Cole said, and Mrs. Bryant? This note, combined with your clean mental health evaluation, effectively nukes any argument your parents might have if they try to challenge the will. A judge will laugh them out of court. Thank you. Mr. Cole, I said, I will have it ready for you. He said, good luck. Madeline. I hung up. I sat in the dark car. I had the video. I had the chat logs. I had the forgery. I had the doctor's letter. And now, I had my grandfather's voice from the grave, calling my father a wolf. For 32 years, I had let them tell the story of Madeline Bryant. Madeline is difficult. Madeline is sensitive. Madeline is unstable. Madeline is broken. They had written the book, bound it, and sold it to anyone who would listen, even to me. I looked at my face in the rearview mirror. My eyes were clear. My jaw was set. No more. I said to the reflection, I wasn't going to just survive the dinner on Saturday. I wasn't going to just dodge the trap. I was going to rewrite the ending. I got out of the car and walked up to my apartment. I had one day left before the dinner. I needed to prepare my presentation. After all, I was a marketing analyst. If they wanted a wellness talk, I would give them a performance review they would never forget. The email arrived at 5:45 in the evening, just as I was putting on my coat. I was standing in my hallway, checking my purse for the third time to ensure the USB drive was secure in the zippered interior pocket. My phone buzzed. When I looked down, I saw Jenna's name. Subject: I am sorry. My thumb hovered over the screen. For a moment, I thought about not opening it. I thought about walking into that dinner blind, relying only on the anger that had been fueling me for days. But I was an analyst. I did not ignore data. I opened the email. There was no body text, just a zipped folder attached, labeled chat_export_full_logs. I went back to my desk, sat down, and opened it on my laptop. It wasn't just screenshots this time. It was the raw export file. Hundreds of pages of text, spanning months. I did not have time to read it all, but I did a quick keyword search for my name. What I found made the blood drain from my face, leaving me cold and dangerously calm. There was a conversation from 3 days ago. Thomas, I ran into Bob Miller at the hardware store. He asked how Madeline was doing. I told him we are keeping a close eye on her, that she is struggling with reality again. We need to control the narrative before she talks to anyone. Elaine. Good. I spoke to Mrs. Gable over the fence. I told her Madeline has been off her meds. If Madeline tries to talk to her about the house, Mrs. Gable will just think it is the paranoia talking. We have to make it believable so no one questions the guardianship. Jenna. Is that necessary? Telling the neighbors? Thomas. It is necessary if we want to protect the assets, if she fights the evaluation. We need witnesses who can say she has been acting erratically. I closed the laptop. They weren't just gaslighting me within the walls of the house. They were poisoning my reputation in the town I had lived in my entire life. They were salting the earth so that no matter where I turned, I would find no purchase. I looked at the timestamp of the email. Sent 10 minutes ago. Jenna had sent it. She hadn't added a message, hadn't asked for forgiveness. She had just handed me the ammunition. I stood up. I smoothed the front of my dress. It was a navy blue sheath dress, structured and professional. I wasn't going to a family dinner. I was going to a board meeting where I intended to fire the entire executive team. I grabbed my phone. It was fully charged. I walked out the door. The drive to my parents' house was a blur of suburban twilight. When I pulled into the driveway, the house looked nauseatingly perfect. The porch light was on, casting a warm, welcoming glow against the white siding. The flower beds were weeded. It was the American dream, packaged and sold by two people who would sell their own daughter to keep the lights on. I walked up the path. I didn't knock. I used my key, the key they hadn't managed to take back yet. I stepped inside. The smell of roast beef and rosemary hit me instantly. It was the smell of Sunday afternoons, of safety, of home. It made my stomach turn. "Madeline!" Elaine called out from the dining room. "You are right on time." I walked into the dining room. The table was set with the good china, the ones with the gold rim that we only used for Christmas and Easter. There were crystal wine glasses and a centerpiece of fresh hydrangeas. It was a stage. My father, Thomas, stood at the head of the table, opening a bottle of Cabernet. He wore a crisp, button-down shirt and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Happy birthday." "Dad," I said. My voice was level, devoid of inflection. "Thank you, sweetheart," he said. He moved to hug me. I stepped sideways, pretending to admire the flowers. "The table looks beautiful." "Mom," I said. Elaine beamed, but her hands were fluttering nervously at her throat. "We wanted to make it special. It has been so long since we were all together like this, just the core four." Jenna was already seated. She was wearing a pale pink sweater that made her look younger than 30. She was staring at her empty plate, her hands gripping her napkin so tight her knuckles were white. She didn't look up when I sat down across from her. "Hello, Jenna," I said. She flinched. "Hi, Mads," she whispered. Thomas poured the wine. He filled my glass to the brim. "To family," he said, raising his glass. "To sticking together through the hard times." I didn't touch my glass. I watched him drink. I watched Elaine take a large gulp. We ate in a stilted, excruciating charade of normalcy. Elaine talked about the weather. Thomas talked about his golf game. They asked me generic questions about work, but they didn't listen to the answers. They were just filling the air, waiting for the right moment to spring the trap. I ate 3 bites of potatoes. I moved the meat around my plate. When the plates were cleared, the air in the room shifted. It became heavier, charged with static. Thomas cleared his throat. He placed his hands flat on the table. "Madeline," he began, his voice dropping an octave into his serious father register. "We wanted to have you over tonight not just for my birthday, but because we need to talk. We need to talk about you." I folded my hands in my lap. I felt my phone in my pocket, heavy and cool. "What about me?" I asked. Elaine reached across the table and tried to touch my hand. I pulled it back. "We are worried." "Honey," she said, her eyes glistening with practiced tears. "We have been watching you lately. You seem strained. You are working so hard, and you seem so isolated. We think you are carrying too much." I looked from one to the other. "I am fine," I said. "You are not fine." Thomas corrected me gently. "You are exhibiting signs of stress that we have seen before. The irritability, the paranoia, the way you pulled away from us. We are your family. Madeline, we know you better than anyone." He reached down beside his chair and picked up a manila folder. He slid it across the polished wood of the table. It stopped right in front of me. "We want to help," he said. "We have put together a plan, a way to give you a break." I looked at the folder. I didn't open it. "What kind of break?" I asked. Elaine jumped in. "It is a wellness program. A few weeks at a lovely center up north. Just to rest, to talk to someone. And while you are there, your father can handle the administrative side of things, your bills, your apartment, so you do not have to worry." I reached out and opened the folder. Inside was a glossy brochure for a facility called Serenity Creek, and underneath it was a document, Voluntary Authorization for Evaluation and Temporary Guardianship. I scanned the text. It was exactly what I expected. It gave Thomas Bryant the legal authority to make medical and financial decisions on my behalf if I was deemed incapacitated by the facility's doctor. And there, buried in paragraph 4, was the clause. In the event of a diagnosis requiring extended care, the signatory grants the guardian full access to all assets, real estate, and trusts for the purpose of asset protection. Asset protection. That was code for theft. I looked up. My face remained a mask of calm curiosity. "This says you would control my assets." I said, "Just temporarily." Thomas said quickly, "Just so your bills get paid. You know how you get with numbers when you are emotional." We do not want you to fall behind. I am a data analyst. Dad, I said, I manage budgets for a living. I have an 800 credit score. When have I ever fallen behind on a bill? Thomas sighed, a sound of immense patience. Do not get defensive. Madeline, this is exactly what we are talking about. You rewrite history. Remember the Chicago incident? I blinked. The Chicago incident. You mean when I was 24 and I got promoted to the regional office? I asked. You called us crying every night, Elaine said softly. You were overwhelmed. You couldn't handle the city. We had to come get you. I stared at her. I called you because my apartment was burglarized. I said clearly, I wasn't overwhelmed by the job. I was terrified because someone had kicked in my front door. I didn't quit. I transferred back because you told me you needed help with Grandma after her hip surgery. Elaine shook her head sadly. See? That is not how it happened. Honey, you were having a breakdown. We covered for you. I looked at Jenna. She was staring at the tablecloth, tears silently sliding down her nose. And you? Jenna? I asked. Do you remember it that way? Jenna's shoulders shook. She didn't speak. Thomas tapped the folder. The point is, Madeline, you have a history of instability. We are just trying to protect you before you hurt yourself or lose everything. We love you. We just want you to sign this so we can get you the help you need. I closed the folder. I looked at my father. I looked at my mother. I saw the desperation behind their eyes. They needed this signature. They needed it like oxygen. What about the time I paid Jenna's rent? I asked. The room went silent. Excuse me? Thomas said. 3 years ago. I said, when Mark lost his job, Jenna called me because they were going to be evicted. I wired her $4,000. I didn't tell you because she asked me not to. Was I unstable then? Was I incompetent when I saved your daughter from homelessness? Jenna made a small, choked sound. That is irrelevant. Thomas snapped. Stop trying to deflect. I am not deflecting. I said, I am fact-checking. You are presenting a narrative that I am unable to manage my life. The data suggests otherwise. Thomas's face was turning a mottled red. Enough with the data. He slammed his hand on the table. You are sick. Madeline, you are not thinking clearly. We are trying to save you. No. I said, you are trying to rob me. Elaine gasped. Madeline, how dare you? I stood up. I took my phone out of my pocket. I'm going to show you something. I said. I walked over to the large flat-screen television mounted on the wall of the living room, visible from the dining table. What are you doing? Thomas demanded. Sit down. I tapped the screen of my phone. Screen mirroring. Living room TV. The television flickered to life. My phone screen appeared on the 60-inch display. I opened the video player. I selected Jenna_screenrecord.mp4. I pressed play. The room filled with the sound of Jenna's voice. Oh my God. You have to read what Dad just typed. It is so mean but so true. On the giant screen, the family core chat bubbles appeared, sharp and high definition, the meme of the screaming woman. Madeline when we ask her to pass the salt. Elaine's text. It is exhausting walking on eggshells around someone who is so clearly unwell. I turned to look at them. Elaine had her hands over her mouth. Her eyes were wide, staring at the screen in horror. Thomas was frozen, his wine glass halfway to his mouth. Jenna had her head in her hands, sobbing audibly now. I let it play. Thomas's text appeared, huge and damning. We have to handle the house and accounts before Mad goes off the rails again. We cannot risk her controlling the estate. She is too unstable. Elaine's text. Once we get that evaluation signed, the lawyer said we will be secure. Turn it off, Elaine shrieked. She scrambled up from her chair. Turn it off right now. I didn't move. It was just venting, Elaine cried, grabbing Thomas's arm. We were just frustrated. You know how families are. We didn't mean it. I paused the video on the frame where Thomas mentioned Marston Cole. Just venting? I asked, my voice cutting through her hysteria. I swiped to the next image in my gallery. It was the screenshot of the forgery, the document on the tablet. Thomas's text. I just need to get her to re-sign in person for the official version. The silence that fell over the room was absolute. It was the silence of a bomb that had just detonated. Thomas stood up slowly. His face was no longer red. It was gray. "You were spying on us," he said, his voice shaking with rage. "You hacked your mother's tablet. That is a crime. Madeline, that is a federal crime. Forging a signature is a felony. Dad," I said, "conspiracy to commit fraud is a felony." He pointed a finger at me. "You are twisting things. You are taking things out of context. No one will believe you. You are the crazy one. We have witnesses. We have the neighbors." I swiped again. I showed the text from the export log I had read in the car. I told Mrs. Gable Madeline has been off her meds. We have to make it believable. Elaine made a sound like a wounded animal and sank back into her chair. Jenna looked up, her face streaked with mascara. "I tried to warn you," she whispered. "Shut up, Jenna," Thomas roared. "No, I won't shut up." Jenna screamed, slamming her hands on the table. "It is over. Dad, she knows. She knows everything." Thomas turned on me. He looked dangerous. He looked like a stranger. "You think you are so smart," he snarled. "You think this proves anything? I am your father. I am the executor. You are a single woman with a history of anxiety. If I take this to court, I will bury you. I will have every doctor in the state testify that you are incompetent. I will spend every dime of that estate making sure you never see a penny of it." I looked at him. I looked at the man who had taught me to ride a bike, the man who was currently threatening to destroy my life for money. I felt a strange sense of peace. The worst had happened. The monster was out of the closet, and he was smaller than I thought. "You won't take this to court, Dad," I said. He laughed, a harsh, barking sound. "Try me." I walked back to the table. I picked up my purse. I pulled out the envelope from Marston Cole. "I have already been to the lawyer," I said. "I have the original will. I have the deed to the Ridgeview house. I have the appraisal." Thomas stopped laughing. And I continued, pulling out the letter from Dr. Thorne. "I have a clean bill of mental health from an independent, board-certified psychiatrist dated 3 days ago. It states that I'm fully competent, oriented, and free of any disqualifying conditions." I tossed the letter onto the table next to the manila folder. "And I have Grandpa's note," I added. Thomas's eyes narrowed. "What note?" "The one he wrote 3 years ago." I said, "The one where he calls you a wolf, the one that specifically forbids you from ever speaking for me." Mr. Cole found it. It is part of the permanent record now." Thomas slumped. He looked suddenly old. The fight drained out of him, replaced by a sullen, terrified realization. "You went behind our backs," Elaine whispered. "You went for my throat." "Mom," I said. I picked up the manila folder with the evaluation authorization. "I am not signing this." I said, "I am not signing anything. The house is mine. The money is mine. And effective tomorrow. I am changing the locks on the Ridgeview property. If you step foot on the land, I will have you arrested for trespassing." I turned to leave. "Madeline." "Wait," Elaine cried. "We can talk about this. We are family." I stopped at the doorway. "No," I said. "We are not family. We are a group chat that I just left." I walked to the front door. My heart was pounding, but my hands were steady. I had done it. I had faced the dragon and I had won. I opened the door. The cool night air hit my face. Madeline! It was Jenna. She had run after me. She stood in the hallway, clutching her elbows. I stopped. "I am sorry," she said, her voice trembling. "I am so sorry. Mads, I was so scared. I know." I said. I looked at her. I didn't hate her, but I couldn't save her. She had to save herself. "Goodbye, Jenna." I stepped out onto the porch. "Wait," Jenna hissed. She stepped out after me, closing the door partially behind her so our parents wouldn't hear. "There is something else," she whispered frantically. "I don't care. Jenna, it is over." "No, it is not over," she said, her eyes wide with fear. "You do not know everything. What else could there possibly be?" I asked, exhausted. "The estate. "It is not just the house and the accounts," she said, speaking fast and low. "There is a box." "A box?" "A safe deposit box," Jenna said, "at the Ridgeview Community Bank. Dad is terrified of it. He has been trying to get access to it for months, but he doesn't have the key." "So?" I said. "So," Jenna said, leaning closer, "he told Mom that if anyone opens that box, it could ruin everything. Not just the money. Mads, he said it could send him to prison." I stared at her. "Prison?" "He kept talking about the clinic liability and what happened to Grandma," Jenna whispered. "He said the documents in that box prove what he did." "What did he do?" I asked, a cold chill running down my spine. "I don't know," Jenna said, tears spilling over again, "but I stole the key from his desk." She reached into her pocket. She pulled out a small, brass key. It looked old. "Here," she said, shoving it into my hand. "Take it. Find out what they did. Just, please don't hate me." She turned and ran back inside the house. I stood alone on the porch. The key was warm in my palm. Clinic liability. What happened to Grandma? I looked at the house one last time. The windows were glowing, but inside, I knew everything was shattered. I walked to my car. I got in and locked the door. I looked at the key. It was a standard safe deposit key. Ridgeview Community Bank. I thought it was over. I thought I had won the war for my independence. But as I started the engine, I realized this wasn't just about money. It wasn't just about control. There was a skeleton in the closet. A real one, and I was holding the only way to see it. I put the car in drive. I wasn't going home. I had one more stop to make. The days following the dinner did not feel like victory. They felt like the aftermath of a natural disaster, where the winds have died down but the landscape is unrecognizable. I sat in my apartment, which had once felt like a sanctuary, and listened to the digital onslaught of a family system in its death throes. My phone, which I had silenced but not turned off, became a repository of grief and rage. Elaine left voicemails. They started as pleas and devolved into venom. "Madeline, please pick up. We just want to explain. You are destroying this family over a misunderstanding. I hope you are happy. Your father is seeing a cardiologist because of the stress you caused. If something happens to him, it is on your hands." I listened to them once, transcribed them into a document, and then saved the audio files to the encrypted cloud folder. I did not reply. I knew that any response, even a single word, would be fuel for their fire. They were starving for a reaction, for an opening to drag me back into the mud where they could wrestle for control. Thomas took a different approach. His communication came in the form of curt, formally worded emails, clearly drafted with the advice of a lawyer who was not Mr. Cole, Madeline. "You are hereby warned that any dissemination of private family correspondence or recording of private conversations without consent will be met with immediate legal action for defamation and invasion of privacy. We expect you to return the tablet data immediately." I forwarded every email to Mr. Cole. Mr. Cole was the calm in the center of the storm. He called me on Tuesday, 3 days after the dinner. "The estate is frozen." "Madeline," he said. His voice was gravelly and reassuring. "I have formally notified your father that due to the conflict of interest and the evidence of potential fraud, specifically the document you provided, Marston and Cole will not be proceeding with any amendments to the trust. We are reverting to the original terms of the will." "What does that mean for the house?" I asked. I was sitting on my floor, surrounded by boxes. I was packing up the last of the things I didn't need, preparing for a future I hadn't fully mapped out yet. "It means the house is yours." "Mr. Cole said, "the deed is recorded. The keys are legally yours. Your father has been advised that entering the property without your permission would constitute trespassing." He paused for a moment. I also wanted to say, "I knew Arthur well. He was a man who valued truth above comfort. He would have been incredibly proud of you on Saturday. It takes a great deal of courage to stand alone." "Thank you," I whispered. I hung up, feeling a strange, hollow ache in my chest. Validation from a lawyer was nice, but it highlighted the gaping void where my parents' approval should have been. On Wednesday, I walked into the Ridgeview Police Department. It was the hardest thing I had done yet. Reporting a stranger is easy. Reporting the man who taught you to tie your shoes feels like amputation. I sat across from a detective named Miller. He was young, with a kind face and tired eyes. I laid the manila folder on his desk. I showed him the photo of the forged signature. I showed him the chat logs where my father discussed re-signing it. "I am not looking to press charges immediately," I said, my voice shaking despite my best efforts. "But I need this on record. I need a paper trail proving that I did not sign this document, in case it ever surfaces in a legal proceeding." Detective Miller looked at the evidence for a long time. "This is smart, Ms. Bryant," he said. "Identity theft and forgery within families. It is more common than you think. But it is rarely documented this well. We will file a report. If any financial activity occurs under this authorization, it will be flagged immediately as fraud." I left the station feeling lighter, but also colder. I had drawn a line in the sand that could never be uncrossed. I had formally accused my father of a crime. There was no going back to Thanksgiving dinners or Christmas mornings. The bridge wasn't just burned. I had dynamited the foundations. Thursday was therapy. I sat in Dr. Thorne's office, staring at the dust motes dancing in the shaft of sunlight hitting the rug. I won. I said flatly, "I stopped them. I have the house. I have the money. I have my freedom. But?" "Doctor," Thorne asked. "But I feel like I am at a funeral." I said. I started to cry. Silent. Hot tears that ran down my face. I keep waiting for them to call and apologize. I keep waiting for my mom to say, "Oh my God, Madeline, we were wrong. We love you." "And what is the reality?" he asked gently. "The reality is that they are only sorry they got caught." I said, "They are not mourning the relationship. They are mourning the loss of the asset. I was just an asset to them. That is a painful truth." "Doctor," Thorne said, "but grieving the parents you deserved is the only way to let go of the parents you actually have. You are not crying because you lost them. Madeline, you are crying because you finally accepted that you never really had them." I left his office with red eyes and a strange sense of clarity. The hope was dead. And because the hope was dead, the manipulation could no longer work. They couldn't promise me love in exchange for compliance anymore, because I knew the bank was empty. On Friday, Jenna reached out. She didn't text. She sent a calendar invite to my personal email. Location: Riverside Park. Bench near the willow tree. Time: 5 o'clock. Note: please, I debated not going. I had the key she had given me on the porch. I had the knowledge of her complicity. But I also remembered the look on her face when she whispered, "I do not like this," in the video. I drove to the river. The park was quiet. The autumn leaves blowing in drifts across the grass. I saw her sitting on the bench, wrapped in a large beige coat. She looked small. When I got closer, I saw how tired she was. Jenna, the golden girl, the beauty queen, looked 10 years older. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and she wore no makeup. Her eyes were swollen. I sat down on the other end of the bench, leaving 2 feet of space between us. "Hi," I said. She looked at the river, watching the gray water churn. "Mom says you are dead to us," she said. Her voice was raspy. "I am sure she does." I said. Jenna turned to look at me. "I am sorry. Mads," she said again. "I know saying it doesn't fix it, but I am. I know you are." I said, "But you still help them." "I was drowning," she said, tears spilling over. "Mark, he made some bad moves. We owe $40,000 on credit cards. The house is underwater. Dad promised he would clear it all. He said it was just a signature. He said you wouldn't even know." I looked at her. "I would have helped you." "Jenna," I said, "if you had come to me, instead of conspiring to have me committed, I would have helped you. I have savings. I have always had your back. I know." She sobbed. "I know. But I was ashamed. And Dad? He makes you feel like his way is the only way. He makes you feel like if you do not do what he says, the world will end. That is how he controls us. I said, "Fear." Jenna wiped her face with her sleeve. "I left Mark," she said quietly. I turned to her, surprised. "You did?" "Yesterday. I packed up the boys and went to a friend's house. I realized I was doing exactly what Mom does. I was lying to cover up a man's mistakes. I was hurting people to keep the peace. I do not want to be Elaine, Mads. I do not want to end up like her." I reached out and touched her arm. It was a tentative gesture, but she leaned into it. "That is a brave step," I said. Jenna took a deep breath, shivering in the cold wind. "There is more," she said. "About the box. I have the key." I said, "You gave it to me on the porch." "I know," she said. "But I didn't tell you everything. I didn't tell you why Dad is so scared of it." I waited. The wind rustled the dry leaves around our feet. "It is not just about the estate money," Jenna said. "It is about the clinic." "The clinic?" I asked. "The Rolling Hills Care Center," she said. "The place where Grandpa stayed for those 3 weeks before he died, and where Grandma went for rehab." I nodded. I remembered it. It was a small private facility on the edge of town. My father had insisted on it, saying it was the best. Dad was an investor. Jenna said, "He put $50,000 into it 5 years ago. He is a silent partner." I frowned. "Why is that a secret?" "Because the clinic has been cited for violations," Jenna said. "Serious ones. Neglect, medication errors. Dad knew about it. When Grandpa got sick, Mads, Dad moved him there because it was free for him as an investor. He didn't move him there for care. He moved him there to save money." My stomach dropped. Grandpa had died of a sudden infection. Sepsis. Jenna looked at me, her eyes terrified. "I heard Dad talking to Mom a few months ago." She whispered. He said, "If anyone sees the medical logs in that box, they will see I authorized the transfer against medical advice. He authorized cheaper treatments. Mads. He overruled the doctors to keep costs down because he was worried about the clinic's profit margins. Since he was an owner, I felt the blood drain from my face. Are you saying—" I couldn't finish the sentence. "I am saying he thinks he might be liable for wrongful death." Jenna said, "Or at least criminal negligence. The documents in that box, they aren't just financial, they are the medical records he pulled from the file. He stole them from the clinic to hide them, and he hid them in the one place he thought was safe. Grandpa's old box. He thought since Grandpa was dead, no one would ever look there. But he didn't have the key." I said, "No," Jenna said. "Grandpa hid the key. Dad tore the house apart looking for it. He never found it. He didn't know I found it in Grandpa's desk the day of the funeral. I kept it because, I don't know, maybe I knew I would need leverage one day." She looked at me. "If you open that box, Mads, you could send him to prison." I sat there, the wind biting through my coat. It wasn't just about stealing my inheritance. It was about stealing my grandfather's life. He had traded his own father's health for a profit margin. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the key. It was small, brass, unassuming. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "If I do this, it destroys the family completely." Jenna looked at the river. "The family is already destroyed," she said. "It was destroyed the moment they decided you were expendable. And I want to be able to look my sons in the face. I want to know that at least one of us told the truth." She stood up. She pulled her coat tighter around her. "Do what you have to do. Mads, I won't stop you." She walked away across the grass, a lonely figure against the gray sky. I watched her until she disappeared into the parking lot. I sat on the bench for a long time. I thought about mercy. I thought about justice. If I walked away, if I threw the key in the river, I would have my house and my money. I could move on. My parents would live in their perfect suburban house, rotting from the inside out, but free. But my grandfather, do not let the wolf guard the lamb. He knew what his son was. I stood up. My legs felt stiff. I wasn't doing this for revenge. Not anymore. I was doing it for Arthur and Lydia. I walked to my car. Ridgeview Community Bank was a relic of a bygone era. It was a heavy stone building with brass railings and a hushed, reverent atmosphere. It was 4:45. The bank closed at 5. I walked in. The air smelled of floor wax and old currency. "Can I help you?" a teller asked. "I need to access a safe deposit box." I said, "Box number 402. "I have the key," I added. Holding it up, the teller checked the computer. "That box is listed under Arthur Bryant." She said, "Are you a signatory?" "No," I said, "but I am the executor of the estate. Well, the beneficiary. I have the death certificate and the letter of testamentary." I handed her the papers Mr. Cole had given me. It was a gamble. Technically, the box might not be listed in the main estate if my father had tried to hide it. But if it was in Arthur's name, my legal status should cover it. The teller frowned, reviewing the documents. "This seems to be in order," she said. "And you have the physical key?" "Yes. One moment." She called a manager over. A man in a suit looked at the papers, then at me. "Ms. Bryant?" he asked. "Yes. We have a note on this box," he said. "From Thomas Bryant. He claimed the key was lost and requested the box be drilled. We refused without a court order. He is not the beneficiary," I said calmly. "I am." The manager nodded. "Indeed. If you have the key and the estate papers, you have access. Follow me." My heart hammered against my ribs as I followed him through the heavy steel gate. We walked down a narrow corridor lined with metal drawers. The vault was silent. It felt like a tomb. "Box 402, the manager said. He inserted his master key into the left lock. "You have the customer key?" I nodded. My hand was shaking as I slid the small brass key into the right lock. It turned with a smooth, satisfying click. The manager pulled the long metal box out and carried it to a small private room. "I will leave you to it," he said. He closed the door. I was alone. The metal box sat on the table. It was cold to the touch. I stared at it. This was it, the end of the line. Inside this box was the truth that would turn my parents from difficult people into criminals. Inside this box was the explanation for why my grandfather died so quickly. I reached out to lift the lid. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I jumped, the sound echoing in the small room. I pulled it out. It was a text message. The number was unknown. It wasn't my parents. It wasn't Jenna. I looked at the screen. "Unknown number. I know you are at the bank. I was the nurse at Rolling Hills. If you open your grandparents' file, you are going to find the liability waiver your father signed." I stared at the words. A second text bubbled up. "Unknown number. But you should know. Opening that box may change everything you think you know about them, and about yourself. The waiver lists a cosigner." I froze. A cosigner? My father had signed it. Who else? Jenna? My mother? Or... A sudden, terrifying memory surfaced. 2 years ago, I had been visiting my grandfather at the clinic. He was groggy, confused. My father had rushed in, holding a clipboard. "We just need a witness for his transfer forms. Madeline, just sign here so we can get him the better room." I had signed it. I hadn't read it. I trusted my father. The waiver lists a cosigner. If I opened that box, and if my signature was on a document authorizing the neglect that killed my grandfather, my father had framed me. He hadn't just stolen my money. He had made me an accessory to manslaughter before I even knew the crime was being committed. Everything you think you know about yourself. I looked at the metal lid. If I opened it, I would have the proof to sink him, but I might sink myself too. I stood there, the phone vibrating in my hand, the metal box gleaming under the fluorescent lights. I took a breath. I put my hand on the lid. I was Madeline Bryant. I was an analyst. I dealt in facts. If I was guilty, I would face it. If he was guilty, he would burn. I lifted the lid. Thank you so much for listening to Madeline's story. This was a journey through the darkest parts of family betrayal, gaslighting, and the ultimate quest for truth. I hope you enjoyed this 6-part saga of revenge stories. I would love to hear from you. Where are you listening from right now? Let me know in the comments below. I love seeing how far these stories travel. And tell me, what would you have done if you were in Madeline's shoes? Would you have opened the box knowing your own signature might be inside? If you want more stories like this, where we unravel the secrets people try desperately to hide, please subscribe to Revenge Stories and hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode. Until next time, remember, the truth is always there, waiting for the right key.